Shabbat Shalom. That's a Sabbath of peace. This purpose of Sabbath is to believe that the world is abundant enough, healthy enough, strong enough for us to let down the burdens of the week and to actually rest. And that rest is purposeful. It's not just a stop from working in the world, but it's to work on your heart. And so what you're about to experience for the next 45 minutes is an entree into that, to put aside your tools and pick up your heart. All of the music is original and created by Rich Hordinski. The poetry and the words are mine. And together we'll enter into the space of abundant rest and possibility. Shabbat Shalom. The moment we say, I can't handle this anymore, God says, I know you can't. Let's talk tomorrow. The moment we acknowledge what we cannot do, we open the door a little wider, giving ourselves a bit more strength than we thought that we had. God has a hand in the work that we do, and just maybe in the way we cast aside our grudges, in the way we comfort one another, in the way we stand in the middle of difficult stories and are willing to listen and face the pain, we teach God a little something too. We can never know in a moment of pain what fortune may arise. We can never know in a given moment that feels fortunate at first may in the end turn out to be otherwise. Each day belongs to itself. Every story we tell about ourselves, about one another, has an ending. With endings come possibility of new stories and new strength. Tell God what it is you cannot handle, what burns inside you, what peace you seek, and thereby open a door to what you can handle, what thrives within you, and what new story might emerge. A year ago, after seeing the insurrection on January 6th, I knew I needed to speak to my community. I knew that it was the job of the leader to say something, to be wise in the face of pain. But that's really hard to do when you are experiencing the exact same feelings as everyone else. You're just as hopeless. You're just as much in shock. You're just as scared. You're just as angry. And so I made a decision in that moment a year ago to just be a leader who isn't wiser or has more understanding or knowledge, but one that is a leadership of witness and collaboration. And so that night I wrote this poem for my community and as a new statement of what it means to be a spiritual leader in this moment in time. I call it When There Are No Words. The rabbi must have words when there are no words. In the moment when the siren rings in your ear, or when standing on the lip of a grave, or as the newborn baby screams his way into the world. Or, speaking of the world, when our world all comes crashing down and all that's left are the wounds, there needs to be words, not to heal, but to name the pain which in turn breaks the silence, unleashing a floodgate. So when we sit knees on the floor, palms open to the heavens, we wait for words that are supposed to open a door, letting us grieve and rage and rejoice and remember. But the rabbi is oh so human, just as broken and betrayed as the rest of us. And her words, these words, we all know, are just trying their best to hold you in her arms, to quiet your breath, and to tell you two truths. Nothing will be okay, and you will not have to do this alone.
Move along the road that really
If you're looking inside a Torah scroll for the first time, it's just lines of black letters in these rows, perfectly consistent. And then you get to this week's Torah portion, and it opens up, and the words go like this. They're poetry. And it's supposed to be a visual representation of the splitting of the seas. The portion is called Beshalach, which means to be sent out. And it's the final part of the story of the Exodus, where the Jews or Israelites have finally escaped this pharaonic life and are standing at the edge of the sea, and they have to make a choice. Do I go back, or do I enter into the sea? And the text tells us that there's a miracle that happens in that moment, that the sea splits and forms walls on either side. Sometimes they translate the walls as anger, and sometimes it's supposed to be a literal wall. But regardless, we have this image of the people being surrounded by these blocks of water, of impossibility. And the people walk bayabasha, such a good word, bayabasha, which is supposed to be metaphorically and literally walking on dry land. And it's a weird way to think about it, because how do you walk within the sea and on dry land at the same time? The Vilna Gaon, a 16th century Talmudic teacher, said the bet, the ba in bayabasha, that word means within. He says that the Israelites saw the Egyptians in pursuit and were unsure if God would be able to deliver one more miracle after all those miracles for them. And so each Israelite, one by one, entered the sea, up to the point where they were almost drowning in it, their mouths filling with this water. No one has breath, and until everyone was in that water, only in that moment did the water actually split. And our tradition then teaches that the greatest miracle that we've ever experienced was that God split the seas for the Israelites after proving that they actually had faith. I think a little differently than that. I think that the true miracle in that story is less about the splitting and much more about the swimming. The power of collective belief that change and freedom and opportunity are possible and worth risking our sense of safety for is perhaps the greatest message of this part of our people's story. Before tefillah, before our traditional standing prayer that should happen 3 times a day, there's a beautiful line in our prayer book, and it says, "Pray as if everything depended on God, act as if everything depended on you." It's one short sentence that acknowledges that prayer matters, that what we feel in our heart, the way we connect to God, should bring us peace and hope. And at the same time, that line, that prayer tells us what happens in the world, it's not up to us, but that what we do in this world is entirely dependent on our own actions. The risks we take, the journeys we make, the long and winding paths towards our new futures, new names, new possibilities, are part of the ways that we walk with God. Each of us has a moment, a journey, a story in our lives where the miracle was in the swimming and not in the splitting of the sea. And in those moments, however challenging or long, public or private, that's a moment that our faith rejoices in. When our people crossed the sea, they didn't look at their wet clothes or recall the fear from only moments before when it looked like they could barely be able to breathe. No, the people took up their instruments. Our story says that after almost dying, after testing their faith, after believing that they were part of the change that was come forward, that they weren't going to be saved from beyond, but they were to save themselves, that's the first time we hear them sing. That's the first time we see them dance, a celebration of a people who have been active parts of their own miracle. We sing that story of Micha Mocha every Shabbat, a song of freedom, the moment recalling when we got to that shore of our own personal journeys, that shore of our own communal journey, our own rising out of water, compromised of both prayer and action, that brings us one step closer to the promised land. The gift of 2022 that we're now in, 2 years into this moment, is that we know that part of us will forever be not okay. That there's natural expectations of grief, that we live in a wilderness. And there are so many myths that we now have to grapple with. One of those myths that is coming apart is that our lives that were dependent on building more bricks, more pyramids, never resting, that can't be true when we're in this wilderness. Because when the Israelites looked out at the wilderness, at that desert, there were no bricks. There were no pyramids to build. But there was still possibility and growth. And that what we received in that wilderness, this place where none of the things that we had told ourselves we needed, all the things that we said we had to do, those things don't even exist. And that's where we found Shabbat. We found rest. And we broke away from a life of more is more is more is more that Pharaoh was selling all too well. And we realized that it was Marie Kondo, not Pharaoh, who was actually right. Less is more when it means something. In 2019, there were things in our jobs and in school, in our personal lives, that had to be done in a certain way. And in 2020 and then 2021, and let's be honest, probably 2022, all those years, this pandemic said, no, you can't do it that way. You've got to do that online. You got to do it in a mask. You have to wait and do it another time. Make room to do the things that you never had time to do. Make room for things like grief, like healing, like getting lost and then found. When we pray for peace, it's praying for a sense of abundance, to release ourselves from the bonds that tie us, the ones that keep us trapped in Pharaoh's system. In this next prayer of Shalom Rav, we're asking for that to rise from us. Come on, peace, come on up. Not this playful, sweet, empty peace, but one that embraces the loss, the journey, that moment that we couldn't breathe, and says, even then, I'm going to sing on this shore. Even then, I'm going to rise up and believe in abundance. Even in this wilderness, Shabbat, Sabbath, abide.